Hello. So I'm going to be taking you through your notes for today for the flex day here about familiar image and then your assignment that I need you to do before tomorrow. So familiar image is when the composition and shot type and angle, usually all three of those things, are mirrored later in the film. Other details in the shot might change. The costuming might change, the lighting, specific props, sometimes the setting has changed. But the composition, shot type, and angle is generally the same, and that indicates some difference in mood. The things I've shifted show a shift in character or character relationships a lot of the time. You'll want to write that definition down just so that you have it. But again, the shots will have the same type and composition and usually angle, but they may differ otherwise. The best way to explain this is to show you an example. There are two examples in True Grit that I'm aware of. One of them you may have caught when we were watching the film. The other one is so quick you may not have noticed. That's sort of the problem with familiar image. Sometimes, unless it's super obvious or it's repeated a lot in the film, you might not pick up on it the first time around. So I'm not going to have you find familiar image in Hunt for the Wilderpeople. I've found it for you. You're just going to have to explain what that change is in the character, what has shifted between the two scenes. But for my examples from True Grit, the first set of examples is Maddie looking out the window. So the very first scene where we see Maddie, we have her glancing out the window of her train on her way to town. And then the same shot is mirrored at the end of the film when she comes back as an adult. So notice her face is sort of mid-screen. She's glancing back over her right shoulder. Her face takes up almost as much room. And it's on a train as well, same angle, but here you can clearly see it's got like the brown tones of the city reflected. You see the horses. You see it's kind of, in terms of lighting, yellowish, brownish. You see her braids, so kind of emphasizing her childlike appearance. And then at the end, everything's much darker. The other figures are only in shadow. There's no lamp. Here we see a lamp inside the train, a lantern of some kind. Here there's not, because presumably technology has advanced. And you don't see the browns of the town anymore. Because I think this is a different town, actually, when she shows up at the end. But yeah, so it's less Wild West, more forward progression of technology, etc. But yeah, so that's familiar image, and you can talk about how she's changed, you can talk about how society has changed. There's a lot of options there. The other example of familiar image that I think works really well is a shot. It's just a split second in the film, but it is a shot of a coffin in a train car before the door shuts on it. So after her father dies and she confirms that it's her dad, this is like a 2-second shot. You see the coffin that says Ross, it's the last name, Yell County, hold that station. And then the door shuts and the lights go out. Later in the film, we see this happen at the very end again, except this time it's Rooster Cogburn's body when she's having him removed to her plot. It says Cogburn, Yell County, hold it station. And again, the coffin is different, right? It's a much nicer coffin than her father's. And it's not exactly the same angle. This one is more of an extreme high angle. This one is more of at a sort of afar. But it's the same general composition. There's a coffin. That's the only thing on screen. They have the same words. And then the door shuts. So the next thing to think about is why this familiar image is used. Obviously, there was a point in trying to echo the same scene again or the same moment again. The director wanted to do that for a reason. The people in charge of cinematography of the film wanted to do that for a reason. So that's the thing. Once you find it, you think, why is this relevant? And then explain. And obviously it's you inferring. It's an inference, because it's not like the Coen brothers wrote a paper about why these two images are the same, or said it in an interview. You know, they didn't explain it usually. But my explanation, at least for the second one, is each shot is a close-up of a coffin, though Maddie's father is clearly in a box of shabby boards and Rooster's resting place is more high-end mahogany, either due to differing burial traditions in the future or due to Rooster's presumably higher economic status. One is written on with marker and the other with chalk, but the message is the same wording except for the name, so I'm explaining how they're the same shot. And then I have my why is it relevant. Because Rooster's coffin is a familiar image when compared with the shot of Frank Ross's coffin, the use of coffins as a familiar image, that's a little bit repetitive, don't do that, could further enhance the Rooster as a father figure theme. It also dives into the idea that Maddie is consistently abandoned by the adult males in her life and takes on the responsibility for taking care of them after their passing. Right? So we've got like the Rooster as a dad enhanced by him in the coffin, the same as her dad, and also Maddie having to be responsible for the corpse, basically. Even as a grown woman, she's still taking care of Rooster, sending him back to Yell County just like she did for her father when she was a child. So there we go. So that's why I think that last one is relevant. But that's sort of your task. In Hunt for the Wilderpeople, I've got some options for you. You'll be able to access this notes sheet if you look in the description box on YouTube of this video. I didn't want to put it in the announcement because I was worried people would just do it without listening to instructions. But you should be able to access that if you look underneath the video and click the Google Slides link. But what I'm going to have you do is in your notebook, choose one of the sets of familiar images from Hunt for the Wilderpeople. And they're following this slide. I'll show them on the video, and you can also access them on the link. Then I want you to write a paragraph that answers the following questions. So I want you to analyze the composition, shot type, and or angle of the shots, the pairs of shots, and explain why they count as familiar image to each other. I want you to look at how the second time we see the image compares to the first. So what is different? If the composition, the shot type, angle are the same, which they are for most of them, what's different? And then, more importantly, why was this image repeated? What is it supposed to imply to the audience? And how did the characters change from the first time we saw the image to the next? And when I check your notes tomorrow, this paragraph will be worth 15 points, plus 10 points per page for your notes from the film. So you should have, again, 4 pages in a half-size notebook, 2 pages in a full-size notebook, one-sided. So if you have 4 pages, you got side 1, side 2, side 3, side 4. That's fine. And if you don't have that many notes because you didn't take that many, if you analyze 2 sets of familiar images, that can count as another 15 points towards your notebook grade. So you can kind of make up your points that way if you want. But here are the images you have to choose from. So we have Ricky alone, and just for context, I'll explain when this is in the film. So we have his first dinner with the Faulkners, and then when he is on trial, or not when he's on trial, but when he's in court, when they're trying to decide what to do with him after, the whole climax of the film. So we have this and this. We have the hottie, which is the hot water bag thing, that shows up kind of as a symbol, but we have it in the bed. This is his first night in his new room. This is after Bella dies. We have Ricky holding the hottie. This is, I believe, his first night in the room. This is after Bella dies. And then this is at the end of the film. I think these are close enough to be considered familiar image, even if they're not exactly the same. We have Ricky running away. His first night in the Faulkner house, and then after Bella's death is the second one. We have a close-up on the knife regarding the wild hog or boar or whatever the thing is that Bella kills in the beginning of the film, and then Heck has to kill or attempt to kill after it hurts the dog. That's when this one was. We have Ricky in a police car is the last one. So at the beginning of the film, when he first arrives at the Faulkners versus the end of the film. Which again, it's not exactly, it isn't as good as the Maddie one, but it's close enough, I think. So choose one of those sets and do what I put on the green slide, which is explain why it's a familiar image, talk about how they compare to each other, and then try to determine why the image was repeated, and do that in a paragraph. Hopefully that won't take you longer than like 10 minutes. But if you need to do extra paragraphs because you didn't have enough film notes, it might take you a little bit longer than that. And I mean, I'm looking for a lot, not like 2 sentences. I'm looking for like a solid explanation of the familiar image. Especially because familiar image will be important in the next 2 films. In the last 2 films we're going to watch, Hidden Figures and 2001: A Space Odyssey. They're both sort of key plot points, so want to make sure you get this down. Tomorrow when you return to class, we will talk briefly about editing and music. I'll give you some resources if you need to talk about those in your papers, and then you'll have your first work day. Your draft of your paper, your first draft will be due on Friday at the end of class. So that's what we've got. Email me if you have any questions, but otherwise, I hope this is fairly self-explanatory. Thanks.